Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you today?
I'm cracking, Mal. How are you getting on with the Easter break and avoiding that sunshine that you so favour?
It's been fine. I'm just very, very busy, really. But, it's kept me out of trouble, kept me out of the sunshine, and also out of the rain and wind. Storm Dave that has swept across the country here in the UK. But anyway, that has not disrupted the property sector here in the UK. So let's tuck into our property news. All right, that cheese fest aside, Matt, we need to talk about a number of property issues that have come up this week. We want to start with, again, just to bounce back towards the Rightmove legal action. There's stories out this week that the backer, the legal firm that's getting involved in this, could be set for a £100 million payday as a result of their backing of the legal action that's being taken. So, and it's kind of almost presented as if, oh my God, these guys are getting so much money, it's just not fair. But actually, it kind of feels like they're doing quite a lot of money at quite a high risk, almost like an estate agent does when they kind of decide to do no sale, no fee. This is a kind of no win, no fee. The fee is 100 million quid, so it's punchy, but it could also be naught. What's your take?
We just don't know how much it's actually costing them to do all this, do we? So that 100 million payout, is that going to cover the expenses, or is that on top of what they're going through? But no, obviously no one's doing this as just it's a crime that estate agents aren't doing so well, and there's this big bad portal that they're always going to be doing it for a reason, especially when they're the subsidiary of a hedge fund, aren't they? So it's they're in it to make money.
Yeah, and actually, these guys, the backers, have got some history in doing this sort of thing. They've done a couple, basically against other organisations, other significant organisations. One of them they've won, and another one has kind of gone to mediation, essentially. So yeah, I think that this more and more what we're finding is that. Yeah, again, this doesn't operate dissimilarly to many of the businesses listening in to this particular podcast. The businesses are here to make money. This is a particular avenue that they've sought. They have paid out a lot. There are a lot of lawyers doing a lot of work with a lot of time spent already trying to make sure that. So I guess I'm kind of minded to think that it's not really that bad. If they don't win, then they don't get anything. But if they do, then they get a decent old chunk. And that chunk is basically kind of Rightmove's chunk. So yeah, I think that, from an agent's perspective, these guys who have backed these previous actions, and the two that they kind of worked previously was against MasterCard and against Amazon. So again, not taking down small beasts, but actually going after some real chonky ones. So yeah, it remains to be seen, obviously, how this is going to play out, whether, if the people settle, as we kind of discussed last week, then, what does that mean for them? But yeah, I don't think any agent that benefits from this is necessarily going to begrudge them the 100 million that will come their way, particularly as of all the industries out there, estate agents probably understands no sale or no win, no fee best. All right, next up in our property news. Yeah, there's been a big transaction in the UK property market, the biggest ever. So 270 million, Nick Candy has sold his property in the Royal Chelsea Hospital. So his brother, this is a weird thing about this one, his brother, so there's the two Candys, there's Christian and Nick. And Nick Candy was married to Holly Valance, who used to be on some Australian soap. Matt, you're always good on this sort of stuff. Which one was it?
You know absolutely which one it was. And is it Valance or
You
Valance?
tell me, mate.
It's the bit that goes around the bed to hide the divan, isn't it?
It's one or the other, yeah. So she's married to Nick Candy. They've now divorced, and then he's had to sell this property that he got given by his brother. His brother got it at auction for 75 million, gave it to Nick, and now Nick sold it for 270 million pounds, which beats the previous high, which is 210 million, somewhere in Kensington Church Street, probably certainly overlooking Hyde Park, which was to a Chinese billionaire back in 2020. So kind of back in COVID days. So yeah, it's huge. And the thing that I was looking at was like, so which estate agent is it that got the actual deal? And it's Sotheby's International Realty. So well done there. You know, I know obviously millions of them listening. So yeah, no, that's a real great coup, because that will not have been a small chunk of change, will it?
I think they did it on the upfront fee model, and
So the
it
Purple
took
Bricks model.
$3,000 just to market it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that.
So
And
the
they
thing is,
didn't do
we
the
don't
sales
even know if it's going to go
progression.
through yet. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It's a decent pad though, right? I don't know if you've had a snoop around it, just in that bottom southwest corner of Royal Hospital, Chelsea. It's something that on my drive back from Chiswick Park, I used to
Yeah.
gun past without even realizing it was there. It's certainly an impressive place. But then there's a lot of these huge buildings that kick around London, isn't there? I remember John Hunt bought one on
Yeah.
Kensington Palace Gardens. I was going to say pocket change in terms of these huge places, maybe like 20 odd million. And then Mittal, who lived on the same street, was offering him something in the region of 200 million with no renovation work to it, just because obviously the location and the bones of the building, as you'd say. So, yeah, to see this one come through, it's pretty impressive. And I'm sure whoever did that, they'll have got
Yeah,
the financial
absolutely.
services
I
referral
imagine
as
there'll be a
well.
little bit of celebrating along the way for sure. So yeah, so just some broadly positive news. I mean, I know this is one off, it's unique, blah blah blah, and driven by breakups and stuff like that. But still, it shows London as being a kind of big old destination and somewhere that people still want to buy or acquire some really really valuable real estate in. All right, next up on our property news, we wanted to just have a look at we're coming up fast onto Renters' Rights Act, 1st of May, the initial sort of knockings on that. And we've got stories about there's a kind of surge in evictions as the change to the law comes into play from the 1st. So, anybody who's given notice after the 1st of May has a huge amount more rights than those that are given notice on the 30th of April. I think actually it needs to be on the 29th of April to be valid, because it needs to be 24 hours notice or something like that. But yes, it is quite a significant change. And it turns out that a lot of landlords are kind of just starting to review their tenants and make sure that the tenants are the kind of ones that they want to spend a lot of time with over the course of the next fixed terms and stuff like that. Matt, you, I know, have been kind of looking at this for a number of kind of clients in terms of its broad impact. Yeah, what's your take out there? Is this something that you're seeing anecdotally from agents?
It's not a surprise at all, and shouldn't be really, if you think about the fact that Section 21 means that there is that no fault eviction is gone, and you have to go through the Section 8 process with the extended periods of time. So Section 21, just for anyone in terms of who's not aware of the detail, means you can literally say, Malcolm McCallion, I no longer want you in my house. Here's the notice, and you can set the date and move them out after the relevant time period. Whereas a Section 8, you have to go through court and give representation, and you've got a certain amount of criteria that you can only serve those on. But there's also the fact that a lot of agencies, even big ones, just aren't ready for the Renters' Rights Act, and so haven't, not only have they not thought about the legislation going forward, but also protecting their landlords and make sure they're getting the most out of their investments even now. So it doesn't surprise me if people are thinking, oh, what we're going to do about Renters' Rights Act with 3 weeks to go, and then how do we make sure that landlords are getting the absolute maximum rent they should be doing? Because one of the things that surprised me when I left Foxtons, where we had a really strong renewals department, and a lot of the corporates do, is the number of people who don't even focus on renewals and making sure that on renewal you're getting them sort of increasing the rents. And so getting a new tenant in and make sure you're getting the right market rent at that point in time means that when the whole Renters' Rights Act does kick in, that you're going to be able to make sure that every year you are able to issue the right notice and increase the rents accordingly. And so it does make sense to me that it's happening. I think they've left it very late if they're trying to do it now, but the surge, they should be expecting that. But then again, these groups
Indeed.
are always the ones
And
who
so,
make
yeah,
a
no,
lot of
you're
noise,
absolutely right.
aren't they?
Look, there are 3 weeks to go. Everybody really needs to make sure that they are fully up on this. There are enormous amounts of kind of assistance online. I know Good Lord's got some stuff. There are various others out there, Property Mark, and so on. But yes, do familiarize yourself, even if it is right at the last kind of minute, because yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's going to come into play that is very very different. And yeah, it's going to need to be you're going to need to be articulating that to the landlords that rely on you. All right, that.
A really important, sorry, I've got a bit of a lag there, and a really important thing that sort of ties into the Section 21, and we could go about abolition and also why people are probably moving tenants on and getting new ones in, is around the rent review that replaces that renewal process going forward. So there is a new prop tech that's coming out called marketrent.co.uk, and will allow landlords to put in details of their tenancy and see what it should be achieving based on market data. And that's something that you're going to have to provide evidence going forward when it goes to do this rent review process, which is part of the legislation which does help landlords. Worth a look if you've not been on and thought about how you're going to deal with some of this new legislation going
really
forward. Have a look at
backed by some really
marketrent.co.uk.
good people who've been around the industry for a little while. So yeah, no, it's well worth the look, and can certainly shortcut a lot of some of the challenges that you're going to face out there for sure. All right, that is our property news for this week. Let's focus in on our AI and tech news. Now, Matt, there has been one particular project that has been capturing the attention of most of the AI geeks community. That's Project Glasswing. What's it about?
So we talked about last week, the week before, Claude's new model Mythos, which is scaring the life out of everybody within Anthropic, and that so much so that they're not going to release it. What's happened is actually, not only is it really powerful, it's actually exposed quite a lot of vulnerabilities in the software that underpins the world. And so not only are they being good to us that not releasing it to the world, they're also highlighting our issues. And Project Glasswing is a collection of the biggest businesses in the world, Apple, Google, Microsoft, to name just three, who are coming together to try solve these problems and look at how we work through these thousands of vulnerabilities before adversaries do. So it feels a bit like a superhero film where everyone's coming together to try fix it before the bad guys turn up. But whilst Anthropic are being really diligent, warning the world that they're being really positive and powerful, and you could almost look at it with a bit of a view of, is it just PR on their front? When Spud drops, is Spud going to have the same effect, which is the OpenAI model? Or what about Gemini when the latest one turns up? Are they going to be as dangerous as this is with these millions or thousands of vulnerabilities?
Yeah, listen, I just so like you, that there is there's a cynical take where you can say, look, actually, this just feels like a bit of PR on behalf of Anthropic, who are under enormous pressure, obviously, because of the Pentagon deeming them to be a threat to the US, etc. But I prefer to kind of choose to believe that actually this is a really good example of everybody, as you say, coming together. Superhero style, where actually they sit and go, right, this is really powerful stuff. So as humans, why don't we try and sort it? Why don't we try and fix it in advance? So actually, I think it's a really interesting template for how things might, stack up as we get closer and closer into AGI, which, again, regular viewers will know is artificial general intelligence is basically roughly when AI becomes as intelligent as the majority of humans, before we move on to ASI, which is artificial superintelligence, which is where it becomes even brainier than everybody. So yeah, I think it's a positive move. I think, again, as you say, that the fact that they're kind of keeping this under wraps, and whilst they try and fix all of the bad stuff, is also a positive thing. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting template for how things might progress in future, and it is going to be interesting to see whether the rest of them join in as well. So Elon Musk, Grok, like you say, OpenAI, and people like that, because yeah, it kind of depends on everybody joining in, and even then, how does that then play out for Chinese labs and things like that as well? Positives, but obviously the fact that the Mythos is so strong is something that we kind of knew was coming, but yeah, it looks like it's here now, and that means that within the next 6 months or so, at the very latest, we will start to see what that looks like in the world, and how we can kind of deploy it in our own businesses and so on. All right, next up, we wanted to look at Gemma 4. Now, Gemma is one of Google's models, is a multimodal on device, so a smaller model that basically can fit on your device. It's one that you can basically download and then you can use to do whatever you like without anybody else necessarily seeing into it. Matt, this looks like a real huge step forward because it's so powerful and so tiny. What's your take?
It's amazing timing as well, because in a week, and I appreciate this one, news about Gemma 4 release came out just as we were recording last week's pod, but in a week where Anthropic and Claude are actually limiting and quite heavily in the news, apart from obviously Glasswing, which is taken over slightly. A lot of the news this week is about Anthropic's rate limiting and how people are hitting their limits before they've sort of even started typing letters into the Claude code and the like. What Gemma 4 means is that it's free. And if you download it and use it, and it's as powerful as as sort of using those paid models. And so where your Rainmail might be getting restricted at the moment from using Claude to do all its thinking, you could have a Gemma 4. And importantly as well, it's offline, right? So you can take him on a plane and not pay those excessive British Airways or Wi-Fi charges or however you flew to your last holiday.
Yeah.
So it's really allowing you to be independent of those charges, build it out. And also from a security point of view, if you're worried about where your context is going and how that's all working, it can be sat literally on your laptop, or it's so small on your mobile.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the security that a lot of businesses out there have been waiting for, which is, how do I know my data, my financial data, my customer data is not going to go out to Sam Altman at OpenAI or one of the others, and what they're going to do with it. So actually this builds that kind of walled garden essentially around your business and your data and allows you to kind of mess about with it. This is probably as powerful as the frontier models about 6 months ago, 6-9 months ago. So it is really, really strong. And yeah, and it's really, really small. So no, this is definitely something I'm going to be playing around with. As you said, Matt, my OpenClaw, my Rainmail, uses different models. So, it's got a kind of initial layer that answers the questions and then decides whether it needs a more powerful AI to be able to answer it properly. So that initial kind of filtering layer can absolutely be done with this. And I think, it's going to be a huge moment that we will look back on as being like, actually this brings the super powerful models into a secure environment that many more businesses are going to be able to use. Right, time for just one more on the AI and tech news. OpenAI are testing their next generation Imagen V2 model. Is that right?
Easy for you to say.
100%. Yeah. So it's coming. It's again notionally a step change in terms of what it is possible to do with images. And then potentially onward from that, the videos, although obviously OpenAI specifically for now has shut down Sora. Matt, what's your take on this brand new V?
So it's out under 3 sort of distinct variants as well. For those that do listen regularly, there's a lot of evaluations or evals that people go through in a specific website, I guess, called LM Arena. And the models that have appeared is codename packing tape, masking tape, and gaffer tape. And the feedback's been really impressive. And I guess they're focusing, aren't they, OpenAI and ChatGPT, on specific areas with like Sora removing, but they still understand that there needs to be multimodal, and that multimodal needs to be at the front. And images is something that we saw change significantly over the course of last year. At the start of the year, you couldn't generate text, could you?
No, it's horrible.
And where it is now is really powerful. And you've got Google's Nano Banana 2 and Pro that are sort of cutting forwards. I think this is part of that code red and make sure that they do stay at the front. But I know that you love the image generation, and this would go into the tool of the week if it were not for it's not been released yet. It's just in that sort of testing and sort of skunk works stage.
Yeah, with stupid names that they're hoping are going to be really cool and take off, and then everyone's just going to call it packing tape or whatever forevermore. But yeah, no, exactly that. This is still kind of being talked about rather than actually present to be messed around with. But yeah, always excited by visual AI, because I just think it's so impactful. And I think if a lot of agents and people like that listening in, when you think about what you could potentially use these things for in your businesses, it's significant. And yeah, once this comes out, obviously we will talk about it again. All right, that is our AI and tech news. Now let's dive into our tool of the week. Matt, as you said, we were looking to, we looked at the image one to think about that being the tool of the week, but it's not out yet. However, there is a new kind of way of using ChatGPT's app integration. So do you want to just walk the listeners through quickly what it is that this
Yeah, so we've touched on this briefly with the likes of Zillow and Rightmove, where you can, within your ChatGPT context window, you can ask questions and it'll launch Rightmove and display, as you said, featured and paid for ads rather than maybe the listings that you want for SE5. And
100%.
Using SE5 because that's where I'm sat at the moment. Whereas this is something that I don't think people have really explored further. So there's a whole raft of integrations now available for within ChatGPT. So just an example off the bat is Spotify. So you can basically sit with the Spotify integration, ask it to create you a personalized playlist based around something maybe you've been researching, and that will appear in your Spotify app ready to start playing. Other examples of apps you can connect is Booking.com, which I'll be using for my AI conference in San Francisco next year, and not next year, sorry, next month. Canva, and there's a whole host of apps in there that's worth exploring. So do make sure you're looking at those settings on ChatGPT and Claude if you're using Claude, because these things get released without much fanfare, and it means that you're not necessarily utilizing the full extent that you can be doing.
Yeah, exactly. There's Uber in there. There's a bunch of others. So yeah, well worth having a look at the app integrations. And yeah, it's interesting how they're trying to kind of tie it in with this sort of natural language conversations and research, as you say, and then actually being able to launch some apps off the back of it. So that is our tool of the week for this week, and that is all we have time for this week. Thank you as ever for being there. What are you up to this weekend? Anything exciting?
It's come around quickly, hasn't it? I'm spending the weekend on the beach.
Good. Well, enjoy that, mate. That sounds lovely.
Have my fat to 50.
Of course, be careful out there. Listen, thanks so much to everybody for listening in. We will catch up with you again in about 7 days' time. Have amazing weeks. Cheers.
Take care, everyone.